Okay, we've got a few folks on now. I think we can get started. So good morning, everyone. I'm Carlo Rasmarias, co-founder and COO of Hummingbot. We also have Mike on, who's our CEO as well. And I see we have some folks from the Mainframe community. So welcome to everyone's Mainframe liquidity mining campaign tutorial. So we're pretty happy that we launched the Mainframe campaign just a few days ago. So we wanted to have you have a workshop and see some of the Mainframe folks and give you an overview of how to use Hummingbot, as well as give you an overview of what liquidity mining is. So a bit of housekeeping before we get started. I will post a bit of a disclaimer on our chat. So let me do that right now. 1 sec. And also our agenda for today's session. Okay, so I hope you guys can see that. Also through this workshop, feel free to post any questions on our chat and we'll try to address them so we can make this as interactive as you guys want. And then just to mention on the disclaimers. So just wanted to note that any configurations I may be showing are for demonstration purposes only. So this is not intended to be any kind of financial, tax, or investment advice. So market making is risky. So we do ask you to do your homework, get familiarized with it, how the bot works, and also the risks involved. We do have some documents on our site, as well as discussions on our Discord, on our trader chat community. So there are resources if you want to learn more about it and get familiar with the bot as well as just market making. All right, so we could jump right in. I'll start by sharing my screen.
Carlo, will this be available after the Zoom meeting, this video?
Yes, we are recording it. So let me just confirm that it's yeah, it is recording.
Perfect.
Yeah. So if you want a copy of this recording, you can either email me and then we can send that to you, or you could go on our Discord and our support group. So let me try to put my email in the chat. Okay, there it is. Actually, I'll put our support team's email on here. So you can email our support team and they should be able to share with you the link once it's available. So it will become available usually like a few minutes after the recording ends.
Perfect.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep. So we could jump right in. I guess first thing I'll do, sometimes my internet acts up. So I guess I'll start downloading Hummingbot locally. So let me just do that. And the way to do that, if you go to our website, you can just see, you can click on download. So this is hummingbot.io and download. And then I'm on Mac, so I'll download the Mac version. So you should see that should start downloading. But so in the meantime, while we're waiting for that to download, I can give you an overview of Hummingbot. So Hummingbot is an open source trading bot that allows anyone to run automated trading strategies. It has 3 built-in strategies. So market making, cross-exchange market making, as well as, which is also known as liquidity mirroring, as well as arbitrage. So of the 3, the strategy that users use the most, and the one that I'm going to demonstrate today is just normal market making. So this is also the strategy that's most relevant for liquidity mining, which I also discuss in today's demo. And also, so Hummingbot, it's integrated to a number of exchanges. So it's connected to a number of centralized and decentralized exchanges. So previously the Hummingbot team, we were running a quant hedge fund. So we created Hummingbot to be robust and to have institutional grade trading capabilities, while at the same time being easy enough for novice traders or non-technical users to use it. So as you'll see later when I show the demo, but just by entering a few parameters, we can spin up a trading bot pretty easily. So Hummingbot is a software client, so it's intended to be run locally on your computer, on your cloud server, because obviously it will have your API keys. And if you're trading on a DEX, it also has your private keys. So by having it as a local client, you're able to control your own security. So to get started, I think the easiest way is to run it locally. So that's why we downloaded it today for this demo. But for advanced users, it's typically better to deploy it on the cloud, since typically you'd want to run the quant algobot 24/7. So I've downloaded it today, but other ways to install it, if you go to our site, we have it on our doc site. So other ways to install it, we can install it from source. So just cloning it from GitHub and installing it and compiling it locally. Typically, we recommend that for developers who want to hack with the code or modify it. It's a bit more involved to do that, but it is one way you can install it. And the other way to install it is by using Docker. So Docker, I think, is what we generally recommend. We also do have scripts that we've created. So you can basically install and run Docker instances of Hummingbot pretty easily with pretty much just one command. And using Docker is also the best way if you want to run multiple bots. That's the easiest way to do so. Okay. And also, before we start running Hummingbot, also a few things to get started that you'd need to prepare ahead of time. So here is our Binance account. So in our Binance account, we're going to demonstrate today market making on MFT and BNB. So here you can see on this account, we already have some balance of MFT and BNB. So we have that loaded, ready to go. And then in order for Hummingbot to trade on your account, you need to set up some API keys. So if you just go under API management. So here you can see I've already created 2 API keys. So one is for trading enabled. So this is the one we will use for Hummingbot. So to create an API, it's pretty straightforward. You just give it a name. So demo key, for example. Hit create. Then you can add into the security verification. I'm going to skip that for right now. So, but you just add that in, and it will create the API key. So by default, it will create trading enabled key. So it will look just like this. So it will be read only as well as enabled for trading. One thing to note here, I also have a second key, and this is for liquidity mining for our miners app. This is read only. So I've created this key the same way, just create API key. But in order to make it read only and disable trading, so you'd have to go to edit restrictions, untoggle enable trading, and then hit save. And then that's how you create a read only API key. And so that's pretty much it. So once you have those API keys, one other thing to note, when you create your API key, it will give you an API key as well as the secret key. So when you create those, the secret key will only be shown when you first create the API key. So make sure you store that and keep track of that, because you'll need that later on. And when you go back here, you're not able to see it again. Okay, so that's pretty much how we get it, your Binance account ready. So now we can go ahead and start running Hummingbot. So I'll just click here. One thing to note, since I've downloaded it locally, just admit, since I've downloaded it locally, we haven't registered it with the App Store. So if you actually, one sec, if I click open, you may get a security warning. So one thing you may need to do is go into system. See here, you get this warning. So one thing you may have to do, and this is on a Mac, you have to go to your preferences under security. And click on open anyway. Under general, it will show you the app, and you have to click open anyway. Okay. Okay, it actually opened on my other monitor. So, but that's basically how it looks. So as you can see, Hummingbot is terminal. It's a command line based client because it's intended to run on cloud servers and remotely. So this is the easiest interface to do so. That being said, we do have plans to create a GUI further down in our roadmap, but for right now, it is a command line only a client. So I'll just hit OK through some of the disclaimers. Again, you get a reminder, some disclaimers that market making is risky. So make sure you're aware of that and that you take precautions and trade cautiously at first if it's your first time, and also just get more familiar with the bot before you start using it more. Let me actually try to maximize this because it's quite small. Okay, hopefully you can see that better. So when I'm first starting Hummingbot, I'll have to create a password. And that's it. So I'll just maybe zoom out a bit so you can see some more of the screen. Here is what Hummingbot looks like. Here's the interface. And just so there are 3 parts to the Hummingbot interface. You can see on the top left. So the top left shows the output panel of commands you enter, and it displays information that you request from the input panel. And then that's the top left. And then on the bottom left, that's where that is the input panel. So that's where you enter commands. And then on the right, this is the logs panel. So this shows you logs from what Hummingbot is doing, as well as any messages related to the status of the exchange, connections, and also statuses of your orders. So the first thing we'll do to start off Hummingbot is we will have to connect an exchange. So if I hit connect, I'll maximize it again. So you can see here, there's a list of exchanges that we're currently integrated with. Let me see, it's not showing the full. Okay. And so you can see they're listed there. For this demo, we are going to be showing it on Binance. So I will connect my Binance account. And you can see as I begin to set commands, it has an autofill. So you can see that once I start typing, it will show the available commands. If it's an empty line, if I hit tab, you can also see that there's a list of all available commands. So to connect Binance, I will hit connect Binance. And then it will ask me to enter my API key. So I'll copy and paste that. And then my API secret is that. Okay, so now it's connected to Binance. So what that does when you connect it, it actually checks that the API keys are valid. So if you get this message, you're connected to Binance. And also if you go back to connect, you can see now it's now connected. It's actually verified that the keys are working. So we're ready to go. Okay, so next to start creating a strategy. So we will create a market making strategy. So the command for that is create. And then so here again, if I hit tab, it will show me the available strategies. So we're going to just make a market making strategy. So I'll select pure market making. Select the venue to trade on. So that's Binance. And then here we'll select, I have to select which trading pair I want to trade. So I'll enter MFT, BNB. Okay. Then the next parameter, it will ask me for my bid spread. So this is in percentage terms, how much away from the mid price I want to make my bid order. So I will just use, for example, for demonstration here, I'll just go with the 1%. And then here for the same for the ask side, my sell order, I'll go with a 1% ask spread as well. Then it will ask me how often do I want to cancel and replace my orders. So typically we've seen users use anywhere from 30 to 60 seconds. Generally, that's what many users use. So I'll just do something in the middle. I'll use 45 seconds. So this is how often it will refresh your orders. So by entering 45 seconds, this means that when I first start the bot, it will place orders, and then every 45 seconds thereafter, it will update the prices. So it will get the latest mid price and then cancel and replace my outstanding bid and ask orders. And here, it's going to ask me for how much MFT I want to place per order. So and it shows here there's a minimum. So what this minimum shows is the minimum order size that's required from Binance. So typically, exchanges and Binance, they have a minimum trade order size of roughly around $10 US. So what this 8,257 figure represents is approximately $10 US. So it's calculated that for us. I will give it some cushion just in case prices move around. So here for this demo, I'm going to use like say 10,000. So the next question is it's going to ask me if how I want to manage my inventory. So meaning this is a feature we call inventory skew. So it says right now in my current Binance account, there's a mix of 64.5% MFT to 35.5% BNB. So would I like to keep this ratio? So what this does is it adjusts your bid-ask orders depending on your target level that you want of inventory versus your current balance. So here, if I, for example, I don't want to keep my current inventory, I want to target 50%. So if I hit no and then I'll type in 50%, what that then does is, in this case, since I'm overweight, so above 50% on the MFT tokens, what it would do is it would adjust my sizes of my orders. So it would make my buy orders smaller and my sell sides larger in size. So it tries to do this so that it will try to get that 64.5% back closer to the target 50%. And then I'll just save the config here. So I'll just enter a name for it. And so that's pretty much it. So you can see with just a few configs, we already have the basic configurations of a bot up and running. We can hit start, it would actually start trading right away. But one other thing to do is if we hit the config command, we can kind of see what the a summary of what all the settings are. So you can see here, just to review, we've set up a strategy to trade using the market making strategy. It's going to be trading on Binance, the MFT BNB pair. We have a bid and ask spread of 1, order refresh time of 45, then order amount of 10,000. So there are other configs here. So these are more advanced configs. So those are intended to give you a bit more ability to customize the bot a bit more, as well as to add in additional safety features. So if you go to our docs, just flipping back here, under strategies, okay, here, advanced market making, I'd recommend for users to get familiar with some of these advanced configs. We also have a YouTube video showing one of our other tutorials running through some of these. So these help you with some additional safety features and some customization of your strategy. So we'd recommend you take a look at those. But one basic strategy we have here, so if I scroll up under global configs, and this is something we would recommend for a lot of users, is we have something called kill switch. So this is a bit of a safety. So I typically recommend anyone running Hummingbot to configure that. So what that does is if at any point in time, the bot accumulates a loss up to the threshold, so what we call kill switch rate of 5, which is shown as -5% here. If ever the bot trades and it accumulates a 5% loss, then the bot would actually just stop running. So it would turn off the bot. So that's a bit of a safety feature in case there's something going on or the market's moving in a way that that's not favorable for the bot. It will just cancel the trading as when it reaches that kind of threshold. Conversely, some other users use this as kind of a profit locking mechanism. So they, rather than a negative number, they'll say positive 5%. And if ever they hit a 5% profit, they'll stop the bot. So that's a way to kind of try to preserve and lock in the profits. So to configure that, I'll just hit config kill switch enabled. And I'll hit yes. And then I'll also just just to show you if I want to change the kill switch rate. So change kill switch rate, let's say minus 10%. So now I've updated those settings. So the bot's pretty much ready to run. Actually, I have another test bot running. So on this account, on this pair. So let me just log in on a separate screen to turn off the bot. So one sec. So actually, if I switch back, you can see here on the Binance screen, if I find that pair, so I'll try to find the MFT BNB pair. You can see I have a bot that's actually running. So let me just log in and try to disable that. So one sec. Okay, so right now you can see if I could maybe, I'll try to split screen this to see if that works. So you can see that here's the MFT BNB trading pair. So right now I don't have any open orders. If I go back to Hummingbot, if I hit start, you see it's trying to connect to Binance, and you can see there it's already started creating an order book, orders for this pair. You can see here it's creating a sell side order. So it has the actually this is here. If we go back to the bot, you can, if I hit status, you can see it's created. Let me just adjust the sizes here. So it's created one order right now, and so even though, if you recall, I entered an amount of 10,000. Because my current inventory levels are above my target, it's actually adjusted my size of my sell order. And one other thing that's happening here, you can see there's something called inventory range. So I'll just explain what these are right now. So first of all, because we enabled inventory skew, and since I'm overweight MFT with respect to BNB at the moment, so you can see my 64.6% is above my 50% target. The first thing Hummingbot has done is it's scaled my cell size. So see on this row order adjusts, it's doubled the size of my sell order. So when I set the order size to 10,000, because of this adjustment, it's revised that to 20,000. So that's why you see on Binance that sell order that it's created is for 20,000. The second thing that's going on here, and this is also deeper into the weeds of the inventory skew range function, is you can specify something called inventory range, which gives you some tolerance, and it affects how the Hummingbot's creating orders. So here you can see, because I'm outside of the range, and this range is determined by it's kind of a ratio of the amount of inventory you're using for orders versus your overall balance. So here, so the 10,000, 20,000 amounts, it's roughly something like 5.8% of my current balance. So it's a small amount in respect of my overall balance. So that's why this range is relatively narrow, i.e. it's only 44% to 55%. So how that's determined, it's because of that ratio of order amount versus total balance. Because my current weight is 64%, which is above the 65%, what the bot has actually done here is it's stopped creating buy orders. So typically, since it's a market making bot, it will create both buy and sell sides. By having inventory skew that typically adjusts the sizes to help you get closer to your target. The third step that's happening here is because I'm outside of the inventory range, it's stopped creating buy orders altogether. And so once some of my sell orders get filled, so once my exposure gets to within the band, then it will start resuming placing both buy and sell orders. So I see, I'm just looking at the question. So Jack that's where Jack mentioned that. So that's why it's only doing sell orders. If we wanted to actually, so I'll show you if I make this range wider. So if I do config, so I click on this, config order level, sorry, inventory skew. So we have a field called inventory range multiplier. So right now, by default, this is 1. Again, this is reference to order size as a ratio of your total balance. So here we'll widen it out. So let's say 3. So when I change configs, I do have to stop and start the bot. There are only 2 configs that actually work on the fly. So that's bid and ask spread. So if you're changing your bid and ask spread, you don't have to restart Hummingbot, but for all other, so for those 2 parameters, if you change it on the next order refresh cycle, it will automatically incorporate those new configs for the bot. But the other configs, you typically do have to stop and start the bot. So now we have it starting. So if I hit status, okay, it's still only showing one side, so maybe I need to make the range even wider. It's kind of it should be creating orders. It's actually right on the borderline almost. So let me try to make that even wider. Let's say 5. Okay, so now you can see there. So now the range is much wider. So it's 21% to 79%. And so my current ratio of 65% falls within that range. And so now you can see that it's creating both buy and sell orders. One thing to note here also, obviously, also the order adjust mechanism is also working. So that's why my sell order is 15,000 and my order adjust for the buy side is 5,000, so it's smaller than my indicated size. So Jack also asks the cancel logic depending on the time limit we set. Yes, so the order refresh rate. So what I input as 45 seconds earlier is typically is what's used to determine how often you refresh. If there are other parameters that kind of are factored if orders are filled, for example, there's another setting called filled order delay. So there are other settings which you can actually go through our docs, but they can impact the way the timing and frequency of order refreshes. But by default, the normal behavior is the order refresh time of which I entered as 45 seconds. That's what's used. Another configuration, there's also something called order refresh tolerance percentage. So this is another thing that helps. What this is since prices may not always be moving a lot, so by default, Hummingbot will just cancel and replace orders completely. But if prices haven't moved that much, then there's really no need to cancel and refresh. So what order refresh tolerance does is it's another setting you can set so that it gives you some tolerance. So if prices move, let's say within 5% or 10%, whatever you want to specify, then it will just keep your orders outstanding and not refresh them. And then when you hit status, you can see here, we have another column called age. So this shows like how long each order has been outstanding. So you can see this one is about to refresh any second now after 45 seconds. So that should be refresh. Okay, here. So it's not canceling active orders because what I mentioned earlier, the order refresh tolerance percentage, it hasn't moved. So the price actually hasn't changed since from 56 seconds ago. So it hasn't refreshed the orders. So this is helpful just to avoid unnecessarily canceling and placing orders. For one, that hits up against your API rate limits. But the other thing is when you cancel and replace orders, there will be a moment of time where the bot's orders is not on the market because it's canceling and refreshing. So by having this order refresh, you also avoid that's momentary lack of an order on the exchange. Okay, so that's pretty much it. So you can see Hummingbot's pretty straightforward. With just a few configs, you can get it up and running pretty easily, I think. And so if you have any other further questions, we have a lot of resources. You can check our docs for that. Particularly, I'd recommend some of you to look at the advanced market making, some of these other additional features that we've implemented. So just moving on, I guess I'll give you an overview of what liquidity mining is. So if you go to our miners app, you can see here, these are the current campaigns we have running. So what liquidity mining is, it's a way for folks who are exchanges and issuers to compensate their communities or anyone who wants to help in market making for their assets. So how it works here, and actually if I connect my wallet, let me just do that one sec. I can show you an example of how that works, but let me connect to MetaMask. Okay, so I'll just log in. Okay, so how liquidity mining works is issuers will offer a reward pool. So for example, if we click on this one, you can see some of the details. So this one, the weekly rewards shown here. This should be 275, I think. I'm not sure why there's a bit of difference, but anyways, so here for each kind of campaign, each issuer specifies a fixed reward pool. You can also see if you go to our docs page, liquidity mining, you can see the terms for each pair. So you can see for the Mainframe campaign for MFD BNB, the amount is 275 for that pair, and these pools are allocated for each trading pair separately. So how this works here, there's kind of 3 parts to how rewards are allocated to participants. So the first one is by time. So if you look here on snapshots, you can see we do it every minute. So this kind of weekly reward of 275 is divided equally into every minute. And then, so that's kind of a way to promote order book consistency. So the longer and more consistent folks place orders in the order book, then the more rewards they will earn because they're able to participate in each minute's more of each minute reward pools. Then kind of the second factor that goes into determining rewards is spread. So the tighter a market maker's spread is, then the higher the compensation or the proportion of rewards versus users who are placing orders with wider spreads. So you can see here, if I just go back to that this tab, so this shows like an average spread. So this spread, and just to kind of break down what one of these snapshots kind of looks like, you can see here, there's 17 bots who are registered as placing orders as of this specific minute. As in a weighted average, they were creating orders of a weighted average of 1% spread. And then, and in total, those orders graded totaled $6,000. So that's kind of, if we look here, if we see how it's broken down, you can see right now how that 6,000 breaks down is they're actually heavier on the bid side in this case versus ask side. So that's good, supporting the token. So you can see here in aggregate, there are 6,000 of open orders as of that minute. And then you can see here the spreads between different sides. So on the bid side was slightly wider on a weighted average basis versus the ask side. And then the rewards earned, this is the rewards earned. So one thing to note here, so this is the rewards earned is that is for this minute. So there's roughly 2.7 cents per minute. And how liquidity mining works, it further breaks that down. So it splits that into half. So half of that is allocated for the ask side, half of it is for the bid side. So you can see here in this case, that's kind of intended to work almost kind of like, if you think of it, the concept's kind of like surge pricing. So you can see here, because there were fewer ask orders, there would be more demand, or or it would benefit to place your ask orders versus bid orders, because here you're sharing this reward pool with a smaller amount of inventory versus the bid side. So if you look here, it's roughly 3-to-1 ratio. So what this means is if you had placed orders of the same size with the same spread for bid and ask, you would have earned 3 times the reward on the ask side versus the bid side, because the ask side was more scarce or lower amount, so you're sharing it with fewer people. So this kind of mechanism is intended to kind of keep things in balance. So like in this case, there's more demand. You would be compensated to add to the ask side, because that's where it's needed compared to the bid side. So in order to actually get started with liquidity mining, so you would have to, first you'd have to, how it rewards, we determine reward, it's based on limit orders created. So it's orders that you've placed in the order book. So one way to do that obviously is Hummingbot. So you can see that's why the current bot is creating orders. So these orders would be qualifying for rewards. So once it's registered in the system, and then once you've kind of configured that you're trading to create orders on this pair, you simply just go to settings when you log into the liquidity mining app. You'd connect your Binance read-only API key in this case. So you can see that I've already done that. I think there is a bit of lags. So this actually shows the rewards earned, I guess, earlier in the day, because I had this bot running earlier. So this actually, we can actually go see how these rewards were, how they break down. So here on this minute, you can see I had the bot running at night. So here you can see in this snapshot, again, as you can see that the total amount of orders across all miners was around 7,000. This bot was placing orders of around $177. So you can see here how my kind of proportion of the shares of the rewards works out, is because it takes into account my spread versus the overall population, and also it compares my sizes. So the 3 things are time, spread, and then size. So that's how we kind of allocate the rewards. So this bot, since we just it wasn't running before the call, before this workshop, now it's running. There is a bit of a delay in terms of how rewards are kind of allocated. So you'll see, because I started the bot just maybe like 20 minutes ago or something like that, there is a delay. There's roughly about a half an hour of delay. This is because the engine inside is actually calculating all everyone's order books. So when we're running these campaigns, we're actually collecting order data real time. So we're getting everyone's data. There is just a delay in terms of when it's reported. So in a few minutes, this should start recording the rewards I'm earning from the bot that we just configured and started running, but it won't show up for another few more minutes. So that's basically it. I guess some other details of the miners rewards is, you can see here when I logged in, I used my MetaMask account. So right now, what that's used for, and just kind of to explain that a bit more, we use the MetaMask to kind of determine everyone's unique user ID. So it's used for that purpose. And then secondly, what we use this for is that's where the rewards are paid out to. So we have each reward period lasts for 1 week. So it's from Tuesday, 12 a.m. UTC time to the following Tuesday, 12 a.m. UTC time. And then and then 3 days after that is when we make payouts. So for this reward period, for example, this will run for another 5.5 days or so. So at the end of that period, whatever rewards I earned on this bot, on this account, a MetaMask account that you've registered for the app. So that's pretty much it. So that's an overview of both Hummingbot and liquidity mining. So feel free to ask any questions, and then we can have some time for a Q&A. So Josue has a question. Sorry, I'm not sure if I pronounced your name right, but so he asks if you can manipulate Hummingbot in the marketplace to play with the trading prices and get incentives. So with Hummingbot, and the reason we kind of decided to, I guess for liquidity mining, for example, the way we try to avoid market manipulation or unwanted behaviors is we're actually only rewarding based on created orders. So by creating orders, you're actually adding order book depth, and you're creating an option and making it easier to trade. So the objective of liquidity mining is to make an asset more tradable. So that's kind of the first thing. And so what that means is we're not rewarding for things like filled order volume, because filled order volume is something that's, I guess, it's known that some of the exchanges and even some participants in the market do engage in. So that's behavior that we didn't want to incentivize. So that's kind of by design. So what we're actually doing in liquidity mining is by only rewarding people for creating orders, they're actually providing a service to the market. They're creating order book depth, and they're reducing slippage for tokens and making them easier to trade. So by doing it that way, we're avoiding things like wash trading or incentivizing wash trading. In terms of running Hummingbot, I guess since it's open source, people can always use it as they want. But it's not specifically designed to kind of do things like wash trading or anything like that. So Wicked Sapling asks a good question. What are the key risks and how do we manage them? So that's a good question. So we have in our docs section, if you look under FAQs, market making. So this is a good intro to kind of some of those risks. So I suggest looking through this. Obviously, in market making, the biggest risk is market risk and inventory risk. So you do have to have inventory to market make to do that. So typically, it makes sense. That's why liquidity mining makes a lot of sense for folks who already have like a fundamental view on crypto. So for example, if you're trading MFT BNB, since you're owning either BNB or MFT, you're long crypto. So your risk is that the overall crypto market goes down. And by by doing things like market making and liquidity mining, you're just trying to grow your amount of MFT and BNB over time. So the typical risk profile for a market maker is by placing orders with a bid-ask spread. So you're trying to kind of capture the difference between bid and ask spreads over time and kind of increase the frequency at which you're able to buy low and sell high. Over time, the ideal scenario is kind of like this kind of graph where prices are relatively stable and kind of range bound. So what you're kind of doing is you're trying to just monetize order spreads over time and accumulate those kind of smaller incremental kind of returns. The downside is like if you have big movements in the market, so big movements, then that's where you could suffer some losses in market making. So this is kind of market risk, and that's the typical profile for a market maker is you try to accumulate profits incrementally over time, and they should help you weather kind of these momentary kind of changes in the market. So the worst case scenario is kind of like if you have a trending market such as this one. So even if you place bids at lower prices, if prices keep going down, then your bid orders continually maybe getting filled. So that's kind of a risk for market makers. I think some of the features we have in advanced market making, so things such as even what I showed you earlier, even things like inventory skew. So to try to maintain a mix of base and quote asset to a certain percentage, that kind of helps with some of those risks of market swings. But other things like investment market making, so things like filled order delay, things like that, and also the kill switch, which I showed you earlier. So there are some things you can kind of use to kind of help against that. But again, they should help, but there's always a risk. So one thing when you're doing market making is you should obviously just pay attention to the bots, market conditions. You can't just completely just kind of run it and sleep on it. You do have to monitor it and make sure that the configs are working for you. Yep. So I guess, yeah, so Wicked said, yep, there are measures and tools to help manage the said risk. So for right now, I think we just, by having these settings you can configure that can help you, but we don't have any automated risk weights to kind of manage that as of right now. I think it still does, with a lot of our users, we do see them, they do tweak their bots. So they do monitor them from time to time, but there are other things like, as well. So just going into a few other features. So there's other things like we have one thing we added recently is something called a price band. So this is one where if prices are within a certain price band, it will continue to create both buys and sells. But then if it falls out of the price bands, for example, if you have a price ceiling of, say here in this example, 97.50, if prices go above that, and if you think that that's a kind of like a risky price to buy, so it's high, or if you're happy to sell at that price because you think it's high enough and you're able to kind of crystallize some of your gains, what this feature does is it will stop creating buy orders above this price ceiling and only create sell orders. So we found that a lot of users found this useful because this gives them a little bit more, I guess, security when they sleep at night, knowing that they aren't going to be buying above prices they think are too high. Similarly, like in the price floor, it works the other way around. If you think there's a price that's really low, in this case, it will stop creating sell orders, because if you don't think it's worth selling at those low levels, if ever prices get down that low, then it will only create buy orders. So this is something that I think users have given positive feedback on, which we implemented fairly recently. So I guess in this current version. So that's something that can help some of these risks. But in terms of managing, quantifying this risk, I think there's nothing automated yet. You still do have to kind of monitor the markets. So kind of monitor volatility, if any big price swings, price movements, to do that. So it is a bit more of a, has to be more of a managed process. So Bertrand asked, at the beginning of the work, he missed the beginning of the workshop. So is there a recording? Yes, we will have a recording. So if you go on our Discord and ask our support folks for it, or I'll also write in our support email. So after this workshop, you can feel free to email the support team. The recording should become available within a few minutes after the recording is complete. And we'll share that. You can reach out to our support team to ask for that. Okay, so Wicked Sapling also asked for, do we have a roadmap for features? Yep. So if you actually go to our GitHub, and this is for the clients, if you go to our GitHub, so in Hummingbot, there's under, should be under projects. Yeah, here. So you can see, if you go to our GitHub, under Hummingbot, under projects, you can see some of the features that we're currently working on, as well as things that are kind of prioritized. Other things are, you can see in issues, we have, so if you do want to request other features, you can request that here on the issues. You can just create a new issue, ask for a feature request. And also welcome to join our Discord community and chat with our folks. And so you can see kind of discuss kind of what's coming up in terms of our development. But you can see here, kind of in a roadmap, kind of the things that are on deck and things that we're currently working on. So I think that generally covers it. I think one thing also to mention, to say, when you first start Hummingbot, I think just obviously use a bit of caution. I think we do have other features. So if you're new to Hummingbot, we do have things like paper trading mode, so where you can try running it without actually deploying any crypto yet. You can actually just play around with the settings and see how it would have behaved if you had been trading. But in that case, obviously, you don't have to use crypto to do that. So that's typically helpful for folks who are new to Hummingbot. The other thing is when you first get started, we typically recommend as well, maybe using smaller amounts of inventory. The good thing about crypto is you can trade in small sizes. So you can actually start trying with small amounts to reduce your exposure and risk first when you're just getting familiar. And the other thing is, so for our liquidity mining campaigns here, you can see here, we found that a lot of users use this. It does help kind of subsidize the cost of market making. So if you're new to market making and you want to learn more about it, or just try out generally quant algo trading and automated trading, by participating in liquidity mining, it gives you another source of kind of income. So it helps you either enhance your returns or also cushion against losses. So what we've seen, like some even strategies some folks use is they'll try to break even on the bot and then they'll just kind of earn the rewards. So the rewards are pretty relatively high. So you can see here, we've shown it on yields per day. And I'll actually just explain this as well. So what this yields per day is, it shows the rewards relative to the amount of liquidity of orders. So when we refer to liquidity here, what we mean by that is that's the current amount of orders that are placed for a specific trading pair. So in other words, as well as you can think of it, that's basically the amount of inventory that's sharing the reward that's available. So if we look at it yields per day, which is simply just the rewards per day divided by the liquidity, so that's kind of shows you kind of how much of rewards you're getting in this market, which is based on the rewards to the total amount of liquidity. One thing to note that this doesn't take into account any P&L that you have from trading. So this is just rewards only. But you can see here, these rewards can range to pretty high. And so what this does is it helps subsidize, if you want to experiment with the Hummingbot, try it out. By participating, you get this added benefit to help you just a bit more incentive to kind of try out market making. So I think that's pretty much it for now for the demo. We do have a few more minutes if anyone else has any other questions. Okay, it seems like there's no other questions for right now, so we could probably just end the workshop right there. If you do have any further questions that may come up, feel free to hop onto our Discord community to chat there. Also, we're also, several of our team is on the Mainframe community Telegram, so if there's any questions from the Mainframe community as well that you want to ask us, that's another venue there. But also, yes, and then if you have any other questions, feel free to go to our docs or reach out to our community. Okay, so I think, so Victor asked the Mac client that GMG doesn't mount. I think if you have issues, so feel free to reach out to our team on the support channel. I think like one thing you may have to do is, if you saw what I did earlier, because we haven't registered it with the Mac store, you may just have to go to the security settings and see if it pops up here. So we haven't had any issues with that with others. So it may be just that it may be the security is blocking it, and you may just have to override that kind of block here. But if that doesn't work, feel free to go on our support channel, and we can try to help you resolve that. Okay, so thanks everyone for joining. And I hope you found this useful. And yeah, so thanks. I will end the call now.